The Flic Twist is a palm-sized, matter-compatible remote control. Button doesn't do it justice. The Flic button is just a button, albeit one with 3 functions. The Twist has a button in the middle and a dial, so it's more like a remote control dimmer button combo thing, but also with a 12-mode function switch. It's weird and brilliant, but the upshot of which is that you can have 12 different modes of operation, each having 2 button functions and a dial. That's like a mind-blowing number of stuff you can control in the palm of your hand. Madness. I'm James Bruce, you're watching matteralpha.com, and today I'll be taking a look at primarily the Flic Twist, but also the original buttons that have since got a Matter upgrade. So both of these devices tout their Matter compatibility, but it's a bit limited in that if I told you this is a Matter compatible button, you'd probably expect to be able to add this to any smart home Matter compatible controller by scanning the QR code on the back. That's not actually what they mean by Matter compatible. Instead, these can control Matter devices, or rather, the hub they can connect to can control Matter devices. So that's another thing we should talk about. By themselves, they sort of work in the sense that they can be paired with your phone through Bluetooth LE. But of course, if you have your phone anyway, the chances are you don't need a remote control button. So you're really going to need either the Hub Mini or the Hub LR long range to go with it. So that's another $30 to $50 that you have to factor into the price. I'm going to assume that you're going to use these with a hub. That's the most common use case, I think, and that's how I've been testing them. So let's briefly talk about the hub as well. It runs off micro USB power, seriously, and connects through Wi-Fi or Ethernet. Interestingly, it also features infrared, so if you have any dumb infrared controlled devices from the last century, you can hook them into the buttons in some way. It also has a 3.5mm stereo output to hook up speakers and play custom sounds, so you can turn a button into a fancy doorbell if you really want. Otherwise, the hub itself is fairly unremarkable. It's very small and discreet as well, just like the devices themselves. And personally, I found the range, even on the LR model, which is supposed to be long range, to be fairly short. So with the hub on one side of the house in this room, it could reach sort of one room down and across, and about halfway down the hallway. So for coverage of a larger home, you will definitely need at least 2 hubs, and each button or twist that you have can only be paired with one of them, so it won't roam between the 2 hubs. So while the Flic Twist could potentially be a sort of all-in-one remote control that you keep in your pocket and carry around the home with you, in reality it's not going to work that way for most people. Let's talk specifically about the Twist. It's palm-sized, it runs off AAA batteries. It can be used handheld or stuck down onto a wall or magnetically attached to something. As I mentioned, it has a dial on the outside and a button on the inside with an LED indicator of sorts around the button. It feels good in the hand and it's surprisingly weighty. I like that the button has a good amount of resistance too, so you won't accidentally activate it while holding the middle and spinning the dial. It's really nice hardware. You can see that mine also has some stickers around the edge. These are available separately, more on why those are even needed in a moment. Configuring it is quite strange. You'll see it has 4 functions that can be set. The push and the double push are the same as the basic Flic button, no need to go into too much detail there. But the twist and the push and twist are mostly the same, with the push and twist having one additional function that I think is the coolest. So of course, twist or push and twist can act as basic dimmer or color changer functions. It can do blinds too. It can also do a curious sort of scene blending to mix between lighting scenes. So okay, glorified dimmer switch, basically, great. But the push and twist, which is where you hold down the button and twist the dial, also has something called advanced selector, and that works like a mode switch. So effectively you get 11 modes of press, twist and double press, and that's why the stickers are so handy. So for example, to use this, you press down, twist the dial, you'll see the LED segment moving to indicate which mode is selected. And then you press again, or you double press, or you just use the dial. And then after 5 seconds of inactivity, it reverts back to the default, which is the sort of 12 o'clock mode right at the top. If I'm doing my math right, that is potentially 24 triggerable actions plus 12 analog dimmer actions on one single remote, which is incredibly powerful and also utterly confusing. So, I mean, the sticker set that you can get for the basic Flic buttons, they're a luxury, really, a cosmetic item. But with this, if you're making use of the 12 different mode selectors, it's pretty much essential. And that's not even mentioning the fact that each function or feature you assign under each mode can have multiple actions associated with it. A sequence of actions that can control multiples of the same device or different devices. You can group things, you can do one after the other. For example, one single button press can activate several lights, lock the door, dim the shades, and start your favorite playlist. And that's true of both the basic button and the Flic Twist with any of the different modes. So it's not actually 24 on-off switches, it's 24 scene selections. Honestly, it's mind-blowing in terms of the sheer number of possibilities of what you can do with this. So there are tons of supported devices, either via direct native support in the app or through IFTTT, Matter, or even just a generic web request. That said, there are some limitations I found while testing both of these devices. The analog twist action, for instance, only really supports Matter, Hue, and LiFX for lighting. Anyway, it can also control speakers. So I've hooked up the default twist to the speaker volume in here. But while Nanoleaf, for instance, is directly supported by single button presses, it can't be linked to the analog twist action. So you can't dim Nanoleaf lights, and there's some weird disparity there. You can set a specific brightness level using a single button action, so I'm not sure why the twist, which changes the brightness, wouldn't support that. Perhaps there's a rate limit on the API, I don't know. But it's just one example of little inconsistencies that I kept running into with the Flic devices. In my button review, I mentioned that Spotify playlists are supposedly supported, as are Sonos speakers. But you can't use Spotify to start playing on a Sonos target speaker. Instead, you have to use Sonos to start playing a Spotify playlist. And the instructions say you can just add a Spotify playlist to your Sonos favorites and then play that playlist using the Sonos integration, but that's not true. Instead, I had to open up the Sonos desktop app, create a new Sonos playlist in my favorites, and then add the songs from a Spotify playlist to that Sonos playlist. You can't get the Spotify playlist just as a direct favorite, or at least you can, but it won't be recognized by Flic. This isn't entirely Flic's fault. It's a limitation of what Spotify and Sonos allow you to do via their API. But it doesn't help that the instructions in the Flic app are seemingly outdated. I mentioned Nanoleaf is supported directly as a provider, as are Philips Hue and LiFX, but Govee isn't, which is why today I'm filming this review in this room, which has a bunch of Nanoleaf lights in there, rather than my office, which have a bunch of Govee lights in there. Now, you can get around this if you use Matter. Any Matter light is supported. This becomes a controller, so you can export it from your existing controller and bring it into here. But while the more recent Govee lights are Matter supported, older ones aren't. And you still won't be getting scenes if you go through Matter, as you can if you have direct support, as with Nanoleaf. So let's talk about the Matter support, which is bare bones at best. While lights seem to work fine, on-off switches, beyond that, I didn't have much luck. For instance, I tried to bring my SwitchBot devices, so a pair of curtains, for instance, which work via the SwitchBot Hub, which is a Matter bridge. Flic did successfully pair with the bridge, and it listed 5 devices successfully, but they all had blank labels and no data or actions associated with them, so I was unable to do anything with that. The most frustrating part of the Matter integration on the Flic button and the Twist is that it's one way only. So these can act as controllers. Well, okay, technically the hub is the controller. These are just accessories for the hub, but the hub alone doesn't do anything. You do need a button or a twist to go with it, but that's beside the point. You can't use these as buttons within your Matter smart home. You can control some of your Matter smart home from the buttons, but you can't say add these to Home Assistant or to Apple Home. And this lack of interoperability is exactly what Matter was supposed to solve. So in this case, the implementation just feels a little bit half-hearted. Now, the buttons, at least, are supposed to support Apple HomeKit, which might be a workaround for you if you're in the Apple ecosystem. I did try, I couldn't get that to work. It added it, but refused to save the actions when I tried to configure them. Maybe just a bug with the latest iOS. Hopefully in future they'll add full Matter integration, but perhaps it's just not possible because of the reliance on Bluetooth for connectivity. I don't know. So should you buy the Flic Twist and/or Flic buttons? In my written review earlier this week, I was a little bit down on the Flic buttons because at $30 each, plus the cost of a hub or two, the limited 1 or 2 room range due to Bluetooth, it just seems a little bit pricey for what amounts to 2 or 3 actions. So you can do press, double press, or long hold. Now, my complaint about range is still relevant to the Twist. If I walk down the corridor, this stops working. But if you think of this as analogous to a sort of universal remote that you might keep next to the TV and control everything in your living room, the range doesn't matter so much. You're not going to be plastering your house with these in every single room, so limited range is less of a concern. Overall then, my experience with the Twist goes in completely the opposite direction, I think. The hardware is lovely and surprisingly intuitive to use. The fact that you can pack 24 button features plus 12 dimmers into this tiny thing is remarkable for around $90, again, plus a hub. The dimmer functionality makes a lot more sense for controlling lights, colors, speaker volumes, but at the same time you don't lose the button features. If you have a room in your home where there's a lot of devices to control, you're constantly juggling scenes or multiple groups of lights, if you find your smartphone interface clunky, then the Flic Twist is ideal for you. I would, however, recommend looking into your specific devices first, check the compatibility, whether they're Matter devices, and if not, whether they have direct support. You'll also find a ton of cool usage recipes on the Flic applications page to give you some other ideas of what to do with all these many functions. On the other hand, don't buy the Flic Twist if you want to carry something around like in your whole house. That's what your phone's for. I think you'll be disappointed by the range. But if you have a small apartment or paper-thin walls, somewhere you can put the hub centrally, then it could also work as a portable device for you. I'll add that you can get much better value by buying a bundle of some buttons, a hub, and a Flic Twist. But you know what, given the sheer number of features packed into the Flic Twist, I think it's pretty good value for money anyway. I'm James Bruce, you've been watching MatterAlpha.com Reviews, your source of information for all things that matter in the smart home. Hit like, subscribe if you want more, and head on over to MatterAlpha.com where you'll find more reviews, tutorials, explainers, and the extensive Matter device database. Until next time, stay smart.